Also joining us on the panel tonight is political science professor Dr. Wesley Leckrone. Wes, obviously a hugely politically charged element, got the backing of the court, goes to his next rollout, and then immediately faced and having to face another huge setback, and that is from the day one, the belief by most, according to the Obama administration, and the wording is, hey, if you like your policy, you're going to get to keep it. And then, lo and behold, well, not exactly. How big a problem does that become for the administration?
Well, I think ultimately the problem for President Obama was, up until that point, most Americans personally liked the president and believed in things that he said. And that gains you a certain amount of political capital, even when people don't agree with your positions on the issues. Yeah. And what you've seen since that time, since the rollout, is essentially that public opinion supporting him as an individual has kind of declined. Right. And that is particularly harmful for a president who's in the latter stages of his second term. Right. When basically Congress doesn't feel the need to run with him or on his agenda, and the president has to hang out there on his own. So it becomes a very difficult political situation for him.
John, obviously, as I indicated, hugely partisan issue. Right. Very, very deep-rooted beliefs, pro, con. But in looking at the big picture, something that the country needs.
Well, we had 48 million uninsured Americans, okay? 48 million, that's a tremendous number. I've said it 3 times on purpose, right? And the expectation
they wanted to have 6 million people sign up.
That's right. Yeah. Well, the goal was 6 million, they've got 5 million. Right. I think the goal was 7 million originally. But remember, we're just talking about
the other million are the people that are waking up Monday morning.
Right, they're the Monday people, right, with their cup of coffee saying, damn it, why didn't I do this sooner? But that's only the exchanges. So you have to look also at the idea that more large employers are going to be providing health insurance. And of course, the Medicaid expansion all by itself was supposed to take care of 16 to 18 million. Now the expectation, sadly from my perspective, is that we're still going to have about 30 million people uninsured at the end of the day. So while this is a public health success story, it's not a complete success story. And I think 10 years down the road, we'll be looking at ways to get more people covered. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives, just earlier this month, for the 50th time, a balloons fell from the ceiling.
If at first you don't succeed.
Right, 50 repeals, and of course it's totally political. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. But I think you're seeing some of that really firm partisanship really digging in even harder.
How about a couple of nuts and bolts issues? Cost. Is this thing working for people?
Depends on whom you talk to, right? So for younger people, right, who have the option of buying a catastrophic plan, or some of them can still be on their parents' plans.
Which is a huge constituency that they really wanted to get involved in this program.
That's right. They are very important. The people sitting over there are very important to the success of the Affordable Care Act, because they're the ones who are healthy. And it's a form of subsidy, just like people paying into Medicare is a form of subsidy, right? So the idea is it's a kind of subsidy of people like me who are getting older, who are going to need more health care, right? So it critically depends on them. If you are a younger person, you can get a pretty good deal on your health insurance, depending on what level of plan you want. Now, if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, the costs go way up, and you could be looking at paying $400 or $500 a month or even more. And obviously that's a concern, depending on your income. Of course, there are subsidies available, and they're pretty generous. So not until you get to $90,000 for a family of 4, that's when the subsidy totally phases out. So there are affordability issues, but the real issue is that healthcare is expensive. Yeah. It's a valuable commodity, it's an expensive commodity, and I think one thing this whole debate has done is to kind of get consumers sensitized to the price of what a commodity really costs.
A couple of specific instances that I've come across and have been pointed out to me again and again and again, and that is one in particular, the so-called working poor, who don't really hit the levels that would qualify them for the subsidies. The bottom line on some of these people are saying, even if I wanted to, I can't afford it. It's not part of my, daily budget.
So this is really a problem in particular for people in states that haven't done the Medicaid expansion. Because the idea there was the Medicaid expansion would go up to 133% of poverty level. If this is sounding too wonkish, stop me. But that was the level, right? And then above that, you'd qualify for a subsidy. And the subsidies could be pretty generous. And when you couple them with low premiums for bronze level plans, the idea was to make them affordable to everyone. Now, if the state didn't do the Medicaid expansion, all right, then you've got these people in the middle who aren't eligible for Medicaid, but are too low for the subsidies because that group wasn't anticipated to exist at the time the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, was enacted.
The other end of that spectrum is something that I've heard from any number of people who have pointed it out and said it has literally been a lifesaver, and that is people who have found themselves in obviously what has been a very difficult economy, out of work, and they have found to their, much delight that they have been able to get coverage through this program at a much less cost than what some of the COBRA programs were.
Of course. So,
and this will get them to the point until they're, these are sometimes, what we refer to as seasoned employees. I guess people like me in their late 50s who are looking for a bridge till they get to 62.
Right. So COBRA, for those who might not know what that is basically a way of getting coverage for a couple of years from the time you stop your current employment. You're basically allowed to continue purchasing the insurance that you had under your employer. But that's expensive because you're paying what your employer paid. The idea here is that for a lot of people, this will be cheaper. Okay, this will be cheaper coverage. You can go on the exchanges and shop for a plan that you can afford. So I don't want to talk too much about the negative parts of the Affordable Care Act, because a lot about it is great. And what's expected to be great in the long run is the idea that people are going to have more kind of job portability, that people are not going to be so tied to a job that they don't like or that isn't right for them because they're so dependent on the health insurance. What they can do is, if they're thinking of starting their own business or want to move from one place to another and maybe don't have that next job lined up, is they can purchase coverage on the exchanges. And one thought is that within a certain number of years, that the exchanges will slowly come to supplant the employer-based coverage, because it will give people ultimately more flexibility. That's the idea of it anyway, or one possible outcome.
I'll turn to some of the young people, the Widener students that are joining with us tonight, and I hope that you all realize, I'm sure that your parents probably do, that you are one of the great success stories that's being heralded under the Affordable Care Act, and that is this plank in the program that allows young people until they're age 26 to stay on their parents' health care programs. I know I used it. It helped me with my kids. But tell me, and we'll start right here in the back. Is this something that young people are talking about? Is it something that concerns them? Are they aware of it?
I would say for those of us, especially those of us in college who aren't concerned about trying to find a job right at this moment, that it's not necessarily something that we are concerned about.
You want to put that off as long as you can, by
exactly.
the way.
I mean, my parents have, I've talked with my parents about it, and I plan on going to grad school after this, and they said, we're not going to retire until you get out of school, so that way you don't have to worry about paying for health insurance at all.
That's great. And next.
My parents work for the government. They work for the state, so I fortunately have the exact same thing. My parents have covered me. Same with my siblings. All of my siblings are 25 and under, so my parents are able to help us with that.
The buzz on campus, kids, is it considered cool to talk about healthcare?
Well, it is now. I'm more on the PR side of things, so we've been handing out the postcards at the political science side.
Oh, great.
They can sort of talk about. So it's kind of created more of like a discussion about it between my classmates. So.
In front?
Yeah, the postcards have really helped because you really get to find out what people's really biggest concern is about after college. You don't really know, because some people could be on tuition remission or an international student and aren't exactly dealing with those problems, but it is a huge general concern.
And next to you?
I think it's something that needs more attention from people our age. a lot of college students don't really think about it, but if they realize the availability of being on their parents' plan until 26, they'll see that it's really a good idea.
John, we probably should mention that there is a hammer involved here that was a fairly important part, and that is that if you do not sign up for a plan, how serious a situation are we talking about?
So it depends. So in the first year, it's not so bad. It's like $95 or 1% of your income, and then it goes up to a certain percentage. But it can be in the thousands of dollars, and it might still be cheaper for people to pay this, what we're now calling a tax. You can call it a penalty, but now pay this tax instead of obtaining health insurance. But the idea behind it is that you will think twice. You'll say, wait a minute, why should I pay this tax or penalty to get nothing when for a certain amount of additional money I could have decent health insurance? So there is a hammer, but I think also it's a way to change the public conversation or to get people to think a little bit more about what it means to be a responsible citizen and to sort of pay what you can for your health insurance. And again, because of the subsidies, to the extent these are calibrated correctly, no one should be paying more than they can reasonably afford for health insurance. At least that's the idea.